Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Look Back. In this one, we're going to be looking at the Mazda RX-7 2-in-1 from Revell, another one of my pre-YouTube builds. But before we do that, let's take a look at a little history of this kit and see where it came from. Alright, let's take a look at the history of the Revell Mazda RX-7 2-in-1 kit. Now, this is the box art from the kit that I have here that I've built. Let's take a look at its timeline. It's number 854429. RX-7 2-in-1 performance, it says. Scale 1/24. Full kit, 2017. It was released with all new parts. So, let's take a look at the history of it. We're here on ScaleMates, and we're taking a peek at the full history of the RX-7 kits. Now, as we see here, let's go back to the beginning. Now, we're looking at the Revell kit, but as you can see, this particular car has had a rich history of kits released by everyone from Tamiya, Fujimi, Gunze Sanyo, Nichimo, LS, Imai, Monogram, US Airfix, Fujimi, Ari, Aoshima, Profile, Micro Ace, Revell, and Hasegawa. So there are a ton of RX-7 kits to choose from. Oops, let's hit this here. Now, this is the instructions to the kit. It's a pretty cool feature on ScaleMates that you can download the instruction sheets and take a look at what it takes to build a kit. And one of the really cool things about Revell is that every part of the kit is identified so that you'll know exactly what it is as you're putting it together. Pretty cool way to learn a little bit about the cars as you're building them. Now let's go back to the timeline. And we can see that the first kit for the RX-7 was released in 1978 by Tamiya, and then it started going from there. But what we're interested in is the Revell kit, which you can see here that Revell has nothing. So let's keep going until we reach here, which was released in 2017, which apparently is the only version of this kit that Revell released. Now, if it's based on another kit, that I don't know. I've heard that it is based on the monogram kit. How true that is, I am not sure. But the monogram does have the racing parts also, very similar to the Revell. So they might be related. But as far as we can see here on ScaleMates, this is the only kit that's available from Revell. And it says here new parts, and by new parts that would make you think that this is a reissue of a kit, of an older kit. If it is or isn't, I don't know, because I can't really find any information on that here. Anybody you guys know that? Chime in the comments. I'd be curious to know if there's any sort of new other history that we don't see here on ScaleMates. Alright, now let's take a look at the build. Alright, here we go getting started on the build. You can see that this kit has quite a few parts. It really is nicely detailed, and it really is easy to put together. No fitment issues at all. Here we have the engine and transmission assembly, which are really finely detailed. You can see all of the chambers of the rotary engine along with the spark plug mounts. You can see all of the details in the transmission. It really is a nicely done piece. Here's where I start to add detail to the engine. You can see I've added the intake, the carburetor, painted in a brass color. I have part of the exhaust added to that. That's done in steel, while the engine itself is done in aluminum. You also have the belt assembly being attached. As you can see, the pulleys are in titanium steel with the black belts, and that allows a lot of the details to come out. Here you can see the alternator at the top of the block. It's done in titanium silver just to give a little bit of a different metallic tone to some of the accessories on the engine. Now I'm starting to add more detail to the engine by putting in the distributor cap, running the wires, and adding the oil filler tube. And this really is a nicely detailed piece. The engine itself is a beauty to put together. So far in this kit, during this build, I am very impressed in that it is very high quality. No fitment issues, it's just a really fun kit. The only part of the engine that's not painted is the engine fan, as from the photos I've seen, most of the engine fans were plastic, and I thought the look of the actual plastic just dirtied up a little bit, gave it a much more realistic appearance than actually painting it white. The only place where I thought this kit could use a little help was in the chroming department, as the model doesn't really have a lot of chrome on it, but the wheels I thought could use some help. So what I did was I just dunked them in a bleach bath and de-chromed them, because the original wheels weren't chromed and didn't really look right to me. Now we're going into some custom work. I decided I wanted to put coil springs on it just to give it a little more of a realistic look, and so then I took a piece of straight sprue, coiled it around a paintbrush, and boom, we have our coil springs. Decided to put them on all four corners so the front and rear both have their individual springs. Next came time to do a little detail painting. I decided I wanted Coney shocks on the rear of the car, as they were a very popular brand that was used on these vehicles. So I got myself a little photograph of Coney shocks and I decided to paint them. I painted the Coney label and their emblem, and I think it came out pretty good for the size that it is. As you can see by my finger, it's teeny tiny. Here the shocks are installed, and you can see that they actually look pretty good under there, I think anyway, right next to the coil springs that were installed. And here's a look at the front suspension with the coil springs already done up. Okay, now it's time to start with the interior. The interior tub I started by adding flocking powder to simulate the carpet, as I hadn't discovered the embossing powder at this point and I was using the flocking. And guys, if you're going to use flocking, it gets everywhere. You get totally flocked. Now it's time to start adding a little detail. I started with painting the dash. It's got a two-tone color similar to the real car, and as you can see here, all the details are installed on the dash. We have our tan colored steering wheel, all of our instruments painted in. It really was a very nice piece. The gauges on the instrument cluster were actually decals, and a really nice set of decals they were too, the way they fit in there. All the other instruments on the center console, the radio, all the controls, that's all painted by hand, which came out really nice. The engraving is top notch on this kit. I really have nothing but good words for it. Now that the interior is totally coming together, we're gonna go and try and add a few more details to it. So at this point I decided I was gonna make seatbelts. This is one of my earlier attempts at making seatbelts using Tamiya tape, which was cut down to size, and then I fabricated the buckles. It was an early attempt, not my best, but I thought it came out pretty good for one of the first times that I have tried doing something like that. Now before I had the interior all painted up, I did do a trial fit of the engine into the chassis with the interior tub, just to make sure everything was going to fit. And then I installed the radiator, the hoses, which are all really nicely detailed. If you look at this kit is almost Tamiya quality with how well it went together and how much fun it was to build. Now it's time to start painting the body. I chose fiery orange from Testors, and I thought that it was a pretty good color for the car. It kind of matched what was on the box art. And then I did all of the black trim with the Sharpie pen, which, looking back, I think I would have rather have done that with a semi-gloss or a matte black based on pictures of the real car. Now the engine compartment was really nicely done, as it's got plenty of really crisp and well engraved items in it, such as the battery you see here, the strut tops, It's got the tanks for the coolant and the washer fluid, and it just really gives a nicely detailed look at the engine compartment. Now for the coolant reservoir and the washer fluid, I just painted a little bit of transparent blue and transparent green mixed with a little bit of white to dull them down a little bit so that it looks like the containers had actual fluid in them. I then decided to make a headliner using some flocking powder, and then I also made sun visors for it. Now if you notice a little bit of a bumpiness to the headliner, it's because I didn't sand down the Revell trademark markings in the roof of the car, as I thought once the car was put together you wouldn't even be able to see that. Turns out I was right. You really can't see the Revell trademark under the headliner material, but in retrospect I wish I had removed it, just because it kind of bugs me now when I look back at it. Okay, now that we have all of our major assemblies done, time to put it all together. Here we have the completed engine assembly with the air cleaner on it, and I gotta say, the detailing is superb on this kit. As much as everyone touts Tamiya quality, I would say this kit is just as good as anything I've done from Tamiya. Revell did a great job with this one. There was a lot of really great detail in the undercarriage, also the exhaust system. I really enjoyed this kit, and it really is a joy to go back and look over. This kit is wound up being one of my favorite kits, and I would really like to build another one, as I think there's quite a few places where I can improve. So thanks for following me on this look back on one of my favorite builds, which it is, and I hope you'll join me again for another look back at the pre-YouTube builds.